Thank you, Phil. My name is Annette, and I like to introduce myself as my problem is me. What I've learned in this program is that ultimately the solution to my problem was drugs and alcohol, and the problem has been me all along. So I try not to blame the drugs and alcohol anymore, but I am definitely a crystal meth addict. It's so amazing to hear other people's stories because, like, I see mirror images of myself. Like, I was the opposite of Ashley, and I've gotten to hear you speak like 3 times, and I love hearing you speak every single time. Because, like, I did the alcohol and the weed and all that stuff because that's what you're supposed to do in high school. And then all of a sudden I go to the farthest extreme, and then I'm drinking so I can do more meth. And so it's amazing how each person's journey is. Like, there can be so many differences, but when you stop and pause and look for the similarities, it's such a beautiful thing at the end of the day is that, you know, in our 12, we have the only literature that CMA has, like, we work out of the big book, and that's how I ended up finding myself in Alcoholics Anonymous is because, unfortunately, I wanted a woman, not unfortunately, I wanted a woman to take me through the steps because I've had men take me through the steps and was unsuccessful at that. I've tried putting myself through the steps because, you know, that's always a great idea. I'm so smart, like, I know how to do all this, you know, and, you know, but the thing that I like about, and I'm kind of focusing my share on, because it's so super intimidating to go after your grant sponsor who you know, had to step away. But, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wasn't planning on being the main speaker of this, and then to go on after my grant sponsor, I'm like, oh my gosh. But to quote our literature, but we made only one promise: working the steps, you can stay sober. Your journey in recovery will not likely follow a straight line. It's up to each of us to learn from whatever twists and turns we encounter. Our fellows always urge us to take lessons as they're offered. If we do so, we will have no doubt about it. We never have to use again. And for me, I'm a chronic relapser. Even though, like, right from the get-go, I knew when I found crystal meth, I was in love. And so just to kind of qualify a little bit, because I definitely belong in all the A's, I grew up in a pretty normal lower middle class household, you know, at least what I considered normal, because, you know, it's normal watching your parents get arrested in front of you, because that's just like, who hasn't seen their parents get arrested? And, you know, I kind of was that odd child that was overly sensitive and overly dramatic, and my feelings were too big for everybody around me. And school was difficult in the earlier years, but then I got my sense of self-worth from being that overachiever, you know, and just to show that overachievingness, I have notes to remember the order of my timeline because I can't remember it otherwise, and I'll be everywhere, but that's the neurodivergent in me that's unlabeled and undiagnosed. Relationships was my first addiction, and this is why my problem is me. So my addiction started manifesting in deep longings for connection, and it was never reciprocated in the way that I felt I needed it. And so that was like, I'm in the middle of wrapping up my 4th step, and I have my 5th step this weekend. And so being able to kind of look at that has opened up a lot of things that I would just kind of turn this eye towards. Like, no, I was compassionate and loving and charming, and people just didn't understand my level of intensity, and they would be lucky to have somebody love them every single minute of every single day and know where their location is. And that's just the type of good girl that I am. And that's insane. I realize that now. You either trust people or you don't. And, you know, this is also comes from our literature in the back that says one word you won't find anywhere in the steps is connection, yet it's at the heart of everything we do. In addiction, we were isolated from other people and our own spirits. We sought to cut off ourselves from the universe, and going it alone nearly took our lives. At each stage of the journey, we've drawn closer to our fellow human beings, and I have found that to be a direct result of both of the fellowships that I'm in. My first alcohol sip was, I probably was 8, 9, maybe 10 at the most. I always saw my dad with these green bottles, and I'm like, what are you drinking? And he's like, here, have a sip. And it was the most god-awful thing I had ever tasted in my life. And it was a Heineken, and I was like, why would you drink something that tasted so horrible? And the fact that I remember what he said is that you'll understand when you get older was like, I don't think we realize also as parents how impactful our words are to children, you know? Another thing that became a big thing in our household is, I didn't know my dad smoked weed. I just thought that's what our house smelled like. So I wasn't allowed to have friends over. Like, I was so oblivious, like, growing up, like, the naivety of my life and how self-centered I was. And then my sister's like, yeah, dad smokes weed. I'm like, what? And, like, it was like, no way, because I thought he just hides in his room from mom because mom's being a bee all the time. And, because I would want to hide from her. That's why I'm in my room all the time. And so, no, it was because he was doing drugs behind closed doors. And so that kind of normalized, it. And of course, the 90s, that's parties. We had no rules. Nobody was watching us. As long as we're home before the street lights came on, we're good. Nobody questioned. There was no way for them to check our locations. If they thought I was at my best friend's house, I just had to get to a collect payphone, leave the message in that first 30 seconds. Hey, I'm going over to my other friend's house. I'll be home at 7. Love you, bye. Don't answer. To try to, communicate back then. And so, my teenage years were completely enveloped by codependency. Relationships became my only validation and my only source of pain. And so it became a really vicious cycle very early on. And, like, I kind of already knew, like, other girls are moving on, breaking up, moving on, and I can't. I'm stuck. I'm in this, like, hole. And so I'm chasing these emotional highs through people, and I hadn't quite gotten my substance yet. But again, for me, it's all the same, and the solution is finding a higher power and through these steps. The first time I got drunk was the first time I drank. It was at a Halloween party, when we were playing bartender because we want to be adults, and we mixed every alcohol under the sun into one big thing, and it was god-awful. And I remember the words that my dad said, well, you'll understand. Well, I kept drinking because everybody else was. And I understood. I liked the effects produced by alcohol. I was the life of the party. I can't walk up the stairs. I can't walk down the stairs to save my life. But I felt like that was a normal thing because I would find ways to trip upstairs sober. And I, unfortunately, was not a blackout drunk. My tolerance was dangerously high. And unfortunately, I did not get to not remember the horrible things that I did from the night before. So my escalation of risky behavior I was a late bloomer. I was like 16, 17. And, I started noticing these patterns of obsession, compulsion, and my emotional stability was the first thing that I noticed. And, I started, once I moved out, because I was telling my mom, I'm going to the bar. I look like a server, even though I'm a busser. And they don't ask me for my ID. And if they offer me a drink, I'm not going to turn them down because that would be rude. I have manners. If somebody offers you a drink, you take it. And so she's like, no, you're not hanging out the bar. And I couldn't understand why she would get mad at me and lock me out. Mind you, my dad, my biggest enabler, looking in hindsight, taught me how to pick my lock because she wouldn't lock the top lock. She would only lock the bottom lock. And so she teaches me how to take my school ID and, like, slip it in so I can get back into the house, And so, I knew that I could get back into my house those times. But I moved out really young. And I normalized it with my friends. I was drinking in the shower to go to work because I had a 3-hour bus ride to go to work. And, who doesn't drink on a bus ride? Like, I'll be sober before I get to work. It's not a big deal. And I hated weed because that was the smell of my household, and it felt like a betrayal. And I wasn't a smoker because I was asthmatic, and, even to this day, my husband laughs at me when I'll try to take something off of his vape, and I'm still choking on it, because my lungs are not built for smoking by any means. But then I started mixing it with pills. I ended up going into an ambulance to get a note for work because, my drinking had gotten to be too much, and I was staying up too late, and I wasn't catching my buses, and so now I need a doctor's note. Well, how do I get that? I'm going to call an ambulance. I'm going to complain of pain. Well, they gave me morphine, and they sent me home with pills, and I'm like, this is great. Like, all I got to do is say I'm in pain, and they're going to give me drugs. This is fantastic. So now I'm paying my friends to give me rides to work and pills. But, everybody does that, which ended up leading to my first marriage. I knew the guy for 3 months before I married him. My mom forbid me from bringing him home or dating him. And I will show her I will marry him because I know how to do this better than you. You're not happy in your life. You are trying to control everything and everybody around you. And I don't have to do that because I know what's right. And so little did I not know is that my husband was an addict. And I knew he had drank because he was over 21, so now I have somebody buying me alcohol whenever I want, and I don't have to have a fake ID. I don't have to sneak into the clubs anymore, and these are all the parts that I wasn't willing to look at before, like, oh, he preyed on me, like I'm just, isn't it? But I definitely benefited from those things in the beginning. Not only that, he did help me get my driver's license, and, trying to find those positives in a very toxic relationship was very hard for me to do for a very long time. But he was also dealing with other very severe outside issues. And, again, being 19, I know everything, so you can't tell me nothing. And I think that's why surrender for me in hindsight was probably the hardest part of this program for me is I was able to quit after I got married. I didn't want to really drink because we got pregnant relatively quick. And all I could remember is wanting to give the love that I was needing so desperately to something else that would be there and love me back, because that's how it's supposed to work between a mom and child, which is so very wrong. The relationship was so toxic at the worst part of my codependency. I had convinced myself that if I just love him enough, he won't feel like I'm going to abandon him, because everybody else has abandoned him. This is a person that's been adopted, went through foster care, went through all kinds of traumas, and I can fix him if I just love him hard enough, and then alcohol became my coping mechanism along with the pills all over again after, now I have 2 kids at this point, and I'm hiding bottles in my room, and it's starting to get scary, but I'm able to work, I'm able to go to school, I'm able to excel, I'm still that overachiever. And so it wasn't until I had a bishop turn around and tell me, you cannot love a rabid animal to good health. And I hated hearing that, because it also makes me look at myself while I'm in my addiction. I'm a rabid animal. I'm taking everything and everyone down around me. I am infecting everything and everybody around me. So fast forward to, we go through so much drama, and I had to file for a temporary protection order. Like, we are literally divorced, and I can't get him to go, no matter how hard I try. So my solution is to call the ex-high school sweetheart that he hated, that I kept a friendship with all these years, who happened to identify as gay. And so he got rid of him. However, he is also a meth addict and only had 3 months clean. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that's like forever. How did you, I'm like, my ex-husband can't even stay clean a day. Like 3 months, that's like, you're cured. And during that time, as he's moving in and we're transitioning him out, my ex-husband thinks that it would be smart to call the police and say that my new boyfriend has been assaulting my children. And I was working for an attorney at the time. And so the police show up at my kid's school. The teachers are calling me. I'm freaking out. They interviewed my kids, and turns out that their biological dad is sexually assaulting them. And I knew he was a piece of shit by all means, but having the responsibility of not only one life, but 2, and this was like my whole goal in life was just to love the kids better than I thought my parents could ever love me. I felt like I had failed utterly as a mother. I failed to keep them safe. It was one thing for me to stay and be hurt myself because I'm an adult. I made the decisions to stay. And so since I love to do things in extremes, instead of like, I don't know, seeing a therapist or, talking to somebody that could have gotten me through that, but I had none of those solutions back then. We really didn't talk about those things. And this was like early 2010. I went straight to IV meth. That was my solution. Everything else has failed. I knew the alcohol wasn't going to be enough. I definitely knew the pills weren't going to be enough. But yet, here's this substance that keeps showing up in my life, whether it's my ex-husband, my best friend, all of these people I know have been doing this substance, and that's their solution. So now that's going to be my solution. And when I say love, I loved this substance because I loved all things that were toxic at that point in time because I was self-destructing. I also used to pride myself on my delivery method. And I didn't realize that was my ego until recently also, because a lot of women are controlled through IV means. Like, a lot of them are not shown how to do it, and men do control that part of it. And it's sickening and sad, but I was like, if there's somebody that needs it, I'm doing it. And now I'm hurting people on top of that. And I think that was part of the hardest thing of looking at myself is I administered this toxic substance to many other people. And that came with a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. So in extremes, again, I lost everything within 3 months, and I remember my biggest argument being is like, everybody else gets long using careers, and I got 3 months? That is bullshit. Like, I supported my ex-husband for how many years, and he got to use during that time. Somebody should be enabling my behavior right now. I am honestly grateful for the fact that nobody wanted to enable my bullshit, because my parents never let me come home, not even when I was sober, which was another hard thing to kind of work through, because they used to tell me, you know, kiddo, the door is always open, but yeah, what strings came attached with all of that? What were you going to control in my life? Because, you know, I'm not mad at my mom anymore, but she lives a very enclosed, very rigid life with very little flexibility. And, you know, looking at her childhood and her upbringing, she was the second oldest of 7, always responsible for all the younger ones, and the younger ones are crazy because, you know, her dad was an alcoholic. So she was in an alcoholic household, and I feel a lot of compassion, even though I'm not always able to show her grace because she drives me crazy. But, you know, I show a lot of compassion because, unfortunately, because she doesn't have a substance, she will never get to know the solution that I'm getting to know today. So CPS steps in, they remove my kids. And everybody is shocked at me because I'm making it look so pretty on the outside. And meanwhile, I am at my worst, and I have plan A through Z that's all falling and crumbling through me. They tried to put me in sober living. I couldn't do that because I wasn't willing to do the chores by their specifications and their times. And like every single day, you want me to clean every single day. Like that is ridiculous. Who seriously mops the floor every single day? I do now. But I wouldn't do it before, just because I wanted to resist all the things that they were doing. And I failed out on drug court. I remember like trying to outsmart the color system because they're pulling colors every so many days. And I'm like, okay, they pulled my color 3 days in a row. It's Thursday. If I do it today, and only today, they're not going to call me again until Monday because they don't call on Fridays. So I can do this at 3 o'clock in the morning on Thursday as long as they don't call me again. And sure enough, of course, they freaking call my color. And now I'm drinking things like bleach and water trying to get it, because I'm like, if I have a low creatine and it's 0, I can say, hey, you know, I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't feeling good. I was sick. I was ready to come up with every excuse under the sun, and so I never went back to the drug court program after that, and because I already knew no matter what happened, I was screwed, and of course I couldn't stop right there. I couldn't stop at that just one day on Thursday. And heaven forbid I go to a meeting, even though literally I was told by so many people, I think you need meetings. And I'm like, I think you guys are crazy. And, you know, I somehow stumbled into my first CMA meeting when I was forced to be at a sober living because I didn't want to be homeless. And I just wanted my kids back desperately. And thank God CPS stepped in and they did not have to go through that nightmare with me. And it was at the Triangle Club, and there was a guy named Mike who was running this meeting, and he happened to work at the Salvation Army. And I got to do their program for 6 months and begrudgingly did it. But there was one thing that the counselor there, he did, and he knew I was ready to run. I walked in there, I'm looking at the surroundings, I'm like, these people have been to jail. Like, I've never been to jail. I've never gotten a DUI. I don't belong here. Like, I need to be at, like, the Betty Ford place because that's where, you know, I belong. I don't belong here at the Salvation Army. And he saw, like, the run, the fear, and I'm so grateful. He's like, do you need to talk to somebody? And I'm like, yes. And thank God he did, because I would have bounced, and I probably would have lost my kids. And so I remember him saying he wasn't an addict per se. And I'm like, what the heck does that? You're either are or you aren't. Like, there's no in between. He goes, well, if you finish the program, I'll tell you my story. Right now, it's considered not really professional if I share that with you. But if you finish it and you're no longer a client here, you can come back if you want, and I will tell you what that means. And so now I want to know. And so his mom was a meth addict, and he was the child of it. And so when he got to share with me the experience of growing up with a meth-fueled mother, it changed something. I had a lot of respect for this man and what he was doing for other moms, and he was a women's counselor there. And so these women that are in jail that have no hope of getting their kids back, and him giving solutions of like, well, eventually they're going to come looking for you. So even if you did lose your kids permanently, what do you want them to find? Do you want them to find that you're dead? Do you want them to find that, you know, everything is still as crazy and that the state had every right, or do you want to see and own your mistakes and be there for your kid whenever that time may or may not come, because it may not come. And so the powerlessness, I stayed here for clean just under a year. They gave me my kids back. They put all these services around me, and it was great. I had housing. I had a job. I had no transportation, but mom was helping at the time, and everything was great. And then as soon as they closed my case, all of those services that were making the single mom stay afloat was all removed. And so now I have no childcare because making $13 an hour was too much. And I'm like, I can't even pay rent with that, and that's too much. So I moved my best friend in, who's still smoking weed and still getting high because, he'll watch my kids for me. And so I start smoking spice because those won't show up on drug tests. Because here I am with my plan again, and I'm lonely. I was so spiritually sick, and that was the biggest thing, and the emotional exhaustion of being a single parent of 2 kids, and my oldest is on the spectrum, and he was so high maintenance. I was not prepared or equipped to have a kid that was nonverbal until 5, who would inflict pain on himself and me and others, and I didn't have an army behind me that they were talking about this village. Where's the village? Because it's me. I cannot stop, and it always starts with me deceiving myself. I can drink. I can smoke. And then somebody recently shared with me, women who drink like ladies don't end up with a needle in their arm. Yeah. I'm like, I guess not, And that's the insanity of my disease. And so my last attempt at getting clean was in 2017. This is now my 3rd CPS case because I left them at some guy's house that I was staying at because my parents wouldn't help. They said I gave them a cryptic message, even though I was like, I need help. I know what's about to happen. And I wasn't direct enough, even though I was like, I need help. I'm in a bad situation. I needed to get clean, but I started the steps. I got the kids back. I found somebody on the streets. And I got clean because, he's clearly more crazy than I am. He can't handle his meth like I can handle my meth, and I need to save him. And so the delusional process started all over again in my head. Meanwhile, some of that might be true, but the point is I will do anything to not look at myself. We ended up getting the kids back together. He decided to get clean with me because that was crazy and insane too. Got pregnant, got married, got the gifts of this program, and then COVID came, and then I'm like, well, I haven't been to a meeting. I'm probably not one of you guys. I just needed to get away from the bad boyfriends, the bad ex-husband, the bad things that had happened in the past, and just drink on special occasions. And so I probably only had honestly, maybe 3 years, if I'm lucky, of no substances whatsoever. And then my sleeping got bad, and it's probably because of a lack of the program now that I'm seeing, because the nightmares started reoccurring and all this other stuff that had been removed because of the program I was starting to work. I started doing the edibles again, and weed is, just, helping me here and there. And, I had weight loss surgery in 2023 because I had Nexplanon, it broke. But apparently I had switched to food. That's how sick I am at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what it is. I can't find moderation. I can't find that middle space. I'm craving the middle space, but every time I find it, I self-destruct and I sabotage. And so this last time, it takes somebody to die in this program, unfortunately, for me to get a reality shift. And unfortunately for us this time, it was my husband's grandmother. And that was a big one for him. That was somebody who raised him, and I couldn't show up for him. Not the fact that I can't show up for my daughter. Again, my codependency at its absolute freaking worst because, my daughter's longing for attention and time. My son is not showering or bathing and not finding a job and just sitting in his underwear watching anime all day. And I can't do anything about that, even though, deep down I hear these voices you are failing again. And that just drives me further into that self-pity, that remorse, that depression. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to just lose it all. And I'm waiting to lose it all. And it's not happening. And I'm like, what is going on? Why hasn't this happened? And then the light bulb comes on. Does it have to? Does it have to? Do you have to get to that bottom level again? Or do you realize that the steps say, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed these steps? And that phrase haunted me throughout this last relapse. So many times God gave me so many different outs that I looked as suspicious and paranoid and like, oh my gosh, there's cameras. And the cameras are in my house because I put them there because I was that insane. I'm hiding in my bathroom, I'm hiding in my closet, and I'm watching the camera from my closet. You know, because I know something's going on there. And I think you've hidden cameras in the house too, even though I told you I'm putting cameras in the house. But now I get to be quick to resolve conflicts in our household, and I get to be the woman today that I wanted to be. I get to make my younger me proud, and I'm not even a chip into this program. Like I said, I'm doing my fifth step this weekend, but the level of emotional sobriety that I've gotten this time, because I got to go to treatment in one of the fancy ones. It was by chance, not because of my parents. It was because it was just luck that I got to go to Costa Mesa, California, and go to treatment in a women's facility. And I was mad. I remember telling my husband, you get to be here in the house in your own bed, and I have to be around angry women. I don't get to have a TV in my room, and they're just going to be bitching about their lives. And meanwhile, I got a nutritionist catered lunch, breakfast, and dinner I didn't have to cook. I just had to wash my own dish. I just had to shower early at 6 o'clock in the morning before everybody else got up so I could have hot water and have a cup of coffee, even though I could only have 2 sugars. You know, I got driven to my meetings, and I got to sit in a room, and I got to hear other people, and it really created something so different than the first time when I was at Salvation Army and I was looking at the differences. I got to choose sobriety. I didn't have to go because the courts made me. I didn't have to go because, you know, the kids needed me to. This was the first time in my life I got to choose myself. And part of the codependency thing, somebody had said that the reason some people have abandonment issues is because at some point they started abandoning themselves. And as I start to heal that wound and I start showing up for myself, all this great stuff starts happening. And so I had the brilliant idea, again, of course, you know, after 2 weeks, I'm feeling great. I slept, I napped, you know, I ate, I'm feeling great. So I go home on Christmas Eve. I get my husband to come pick me up, you know, and I quickly realize I am not ready. I'm going to meetings morning, sometimes noon and night, because I know what I need to do. I know how I need to do it, is what I told myself. But for whatever reason, it has such a deep claw into me that I am scared. I am terrified that it's going to bring me back in. And so luckily enough, in between these 2 weeks, right after Christmas Eve and between the New Year, I find my now sponsor, and it's because she was at the women's meeting in the morning, and then she was at the nighttime meeting, because here I am telling myself, oh, you can shop around for a month. I really liked what she had to say, and I felt that spiritual prompting, and I know that's what it is now. But I was like, nah, I'm just going to shop around a little bit. And then I end up in there again because I'm a hot mess, crying because I am afraid because, you know, at the time there's still substances in my house. I run this by her, and one of the greatest things she told me in the very beginning is I've never heard somebody say that they wish they left treatment sooner. I've only heard that they wish they stayed longer. And that was very true for me. And so what makes this night even more special is I get to speak at my IOP. And so I wasn't able to come here right away off the gate because, you know, my best thinking forgot there's a deductible that has to be paid at the beginning of each year. So had I had stayed in treatment until, you know, January 6th, my deductible would have been met by residential, and then I could have gone right into my aftercare plan here. But instead, I do things the hard way, and I do it my way. But I was one of the lucky ones that got to go back to treatment and then come to complete IOP as well. You know, there are still things from here. The meditation that I needed to do, I went back and did that second time. And morning and prayer and meditation was never a staple. Like, when people shared that, I was like, yeah, right. Who the heck gets up and prays every single morning and, like, has these routines and these structures? You know, if I can have a routine to do drugs every single day, why can't I take 5 minutes to pray and meditate? My routine and my drugs, I'm 8 hours trying to find a vein. I'm getting desperate. I'm crazy. I'm insane. If I can spend 8 hours doing that, I can grump, and I'm not perfect at it by any means. And so, you know, the whole point of this year was about carrying the message. And what I really liked about that is that I get to do that at any point in any stage. Because, again, I felt very intimidated to go on after women who have much more time than I do. But I I love this because they are teaching me how to be a woman who shows up today. And, you know, a lot of them, you know, may not identify, you know, with my fellowship, but here they are showing up for me today. And that is not something I've ever experienced in my life. I'm the one that shows up for people. Nobody ever shows up for me. And that's because I've surrounded myself by some really shitty people. And that should have been the first clue. But, you know, the level of abuse that I tolerated because I abandoned myself and I chipped myself away for so many years, I don't have to do that today. And that's a direct result of this program. And so I got into work. I call people. I try to call people. I text better. I don't know why it's so hard for me to pick up a phone, but when I do see people's numbers popping in now, I try to make a conscious effort. Like, I really don't want to pick up. Why am I so scared? Pick up the phone. So if you ever hear that hesitation, it's because I'm debating with my addiction, you know, to answer that phone today. I acknowledge. And, you know, I get to hand out chips to people and I get to see that hope and miracle happen. I get to be in business meetings and help rebuild a fellowship because it's sometimes hard for me to always identify in AA. But that's where I found my message, you know, that's where I found the hope, and I have this responsibility, as they tell us, you know, we are responsible when anybody, you know, reaches out, and there is, I know we've lost a lot of people in our fellowship since COVID, and we are responsible, and if I can help the next woman coming in feel comfortable in a fellowship where she can share her full story uninhibited and unannounced, because I too also have to censor I feel like I have to censor my shares because it is extreme. Like I remember the first AA meeting I went to and I tried to share that I did, you know, because I was prideful about using needles, and they're like, no, you need to go to your own A and you need to get out of here. And I was really angry about that. Like, fine, forget you. You would be lucky to have me, because don't you know who I think I am, as one of my therapists here used to say all the time. But that's my mask. I come off with this face of pleasant, and underneath I'm angry, resentful, and bitter. And when I let that mask down, it has been the most freeing thing. I'm not the manager of my life, and my life is so much better, even though I'm unemployed. I've been unemployed since April. I deserved to be fired. I used that entire time at that job. I caused so much havoc, could not be on time, but I am going back into a passion that I absolutely loved. I had gotten my aesthetics license at one point, and I let it lapse, and I am taking my state board exam on September 30th, and my kit just passed today, and so I'm very happy about that. I'm not stressed out. Like earlier, I couldn't figure out where I placed my bag. And old me, my husband can vouch, I would be cussing, screaming, crying on the floor, freaking out. And I'm like, you know what? It's okay. It's going to be, I know it's here somewhere. It's not that far. And I don't have to have those moments of panic and fear and everything. And so at this point, I'm rambling. But I'm just a very, very grateful woman to be surrounded by other people in this program that only want to see me happy and sober. And so thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Annette.